Hello and welcome to our second open forum of the week. My name is Matt Sessa. I'm the Deputy Chief Operating Officer here at Federal Student Aid. Before we begin, I want to go over just a few housekeeping rules, and then I'll let our distinguished panel introduce themselves, and then we can start the questions. So if you haven't been to an open forum before, you're in for a treat. So we're going to go in the order of the microphones at the top of each of the rows, starting from microphone 1 all the way to microphone 4. We do ask if you have a question or a suggestion to state your name and the institution you represent, and make sure you're speaking into the microphone when you ask your question. We will ask that each individual try to limit themselves to one question at a time because this is a popular session and a lot of folks have a lot of questions and suggestions or comments they want to make. We want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity. If you have a second question or a follow-up, feel free to circle back in line, and if we have time, you're more than welcome to ask your second or third or fourth question at that time. And then I would ask the panel members if we have an opportunity to restate the question so folks in the audience are clear on what the question's being answered. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Bill?
Hi, I'm Bill Leith, Business Operations.
Robin Minor, Program Compliance.
Carney McCullough, Policy, Office of Post-Secondary Education.
Greg Munier, Policy Liaison and Implementation, FSA.
Misty Parkinson, Customer Experience Group.
And I'm Keith Wilson. I head up the Technology Office.
Okay, thank you. And then also before we get into the questions from the audience, we know that there was a couple issues that folks had questions about and we have heard about coming into the conference. And those of you who may have been at yesterday's open forum, we addressed this there as well. The first issue has to do with student verification. We have heard from several institutions and some associations that folks are experiencing higher selection rates than we have seen in years past. So we are looking at that. So as a reminder, and I know Jeff Baker has mentioned this several times, the way that we go through verification, we use a fairly complex set of risk models to determine which students should be selected for verification, and we try to balance that with overall burden to students and families and you all in trying to go through the verification process. We create and tune those models based on patterns experienced in prior years. So last year, as you know, was somewhat of an anomalous year in that we implemented prior year as well as early FAFSA. So therefore, the patterns were a little bit different. And we had the unfortunate issues we had with the data retrieval tool, which also potentially changed patterns that we're seeing this year. So with all of that said, we are noticing that the estimates that we use to create those models are not being realized. The actual actual percentage of folks being selected for verification is above our estimates. So we are aware of that, and we have been working on how to adjust the models. And within the next weeks, a couple of weeks, you should start seeing a reduction in percentage of folks that are being selected for verification. And then between now and the end of the cycle, we should achieve a relatively consistent percentage that we've attempted to adhere to over the last few years. So that's where we are with that issue. The second issue has to do with sharing FAFSA data. You'll notice that I said. And we know that some folks are used to hearing Wayne talk, but remember, he's from Macon, Georgia. Mm-hmm. So when he says FAFSA, sometimes it sounds like FAFSA. So that's what you heard there. So with the FAFSA data sharing, as you know, there's been recent heightened interest in this because the department's Privacy Technical Assistance Center, as well as NASFA and some others, have pointed out that the HEA has very prescriptive language on how FAFSA data can be shared. In particular, HEA restricts the use of FAFSA data to application, award, administration of aid awarded under the HEA, state aid, or aid awarded by eligible institutions. So this language does not allow for students to opt in to have their data shared with other outside entities. So we've heard from many schools and associations, again, that they use third-party scholarship providers, and they're looking for information to assess how to move forward with these relationships. So we are exploring what options may exist to provide some guidance in that regard. We appreciate your patience and understanding as we continue to address this issue, but we are aware of it, and folks are looking to see what guidance we can offer to hopefully move forward. So with that said, the other things we wanted to make sure we covered, in yesterday's session, we had a couple unanswered questions, operational questions, that we wanted to address at the beginning of this session so that folks who are returning may hear your answer, and we assume that if one person has a question, there's likely others who have the question as well. So we're going to address those first, and then we'll get into the individual questions for this session. So Bill, I know you had a few of those questions.
Sure. One of the questions yesterday was whether we could release the PLUS application in October when we release the FAFSA. Operationally, we can do it. But the problem is that the credit check is only good for 180 days. You'd have to originate a loan within 120 days, 180 days of that application. And the bigger problem is that the COD release for next year isn't until March. So we can look in the future at moving up the COD release, but we're still going to have the issue where you have to originate that PLUS loan within 180 days of when that application is filed. So we need to think about that schedule there. There was another question related to the reprocessing that we recently did and the voided ISERs. And what should you do if you've already submitted an origination or disbursement record to COD and that ISER was subsequently voided? Operationally, there's not going to be any impact. You're still going to get paid for that origination. But we would recommend that you go in and submit a disbursement adjustment so that the payment in COD is not based on a voided ISER. It is based on a valid ISER. It could cause you some issues in an audit down the road. The third issue was a concern that was raised regarding our servicers and whether they access NSLDS when they're answering questions from callers or from borrowers, or whether they update NSLDS when they get an enrollment change. There was a concern that they're not doing that they're using the clearinghouse. That is not the case. All of our servicers will use NSLDS when responding to inquiries, and they will update NSLDS when they get an enrollment change. They also, the clearinghouse updates NSLDS monthly, and our servicers get enrollment updates weekly. So I think that's it.
Okay. And then Craig, I think you had a question related to tax returns, and if someone has income outside of what they submitted in the tax return.
Right. I think it was a conflicting information question concerning whether or not somebody could be required to go back and amend their tax return or file a tax return because of the conflicting information administrative capability. And I said this yesterday, but I didn't have all the chapter and verse right in front of me. And on page 113 of the AVG, we say we've often stated financial administrators do not need to be tax experts, and I think I said that so much yesterday. You're obligated to know three things about taxes. We don't expect you to be tax experts, and we say that over and over. You're obligated to know whether a person was required to file a tax return. You're required to know what the correct filing status for a person should be, and you are required to know that an individual cannot be claimed as an exemption by more than one person. That's the extent of the conflicting information as it regards how a person filed their taxes. And so I just want to make that clearer. The question kind of was in the weeds on tax, and the guy that was asking the question, a very knowledgeable person about tax law and tax filing, but we don't expect that of FAAs. And we say that you have to have a fundamental understanding of relevant tax issues that can considerably affect, and that's the operative word here, considerably affect the needs analysis. So just wanted to set the record straight.
Thank you. With that said, our microphones are open. Over to microphone 1.
Tyler Pruitt, Samuel Merritt University in Oakland. Before I get to my question, just in addition to your statement about the privacy, I know you're looking at it, but it's not just third-party scholarship providers that are affected. We have food stamp, housing insecurity issues, food pantries, lots of other places that we have students that are in insecure situations that this impacts. It's a huge issue, and I hope that it's not just the scholarships. Okay, so this morning we were told that your new focus is the customer, but no one defined who that is. Can you tell me who's the customer that FSA is now?
Yeah, sure. I think.
And who takes precedence when you tell me there's going to be multiple?
Okay, well, I wasn't going to tell you that there's multiple. Students, as I thought I heard Wayne and the Secretary both say that all of us are interested in helping students receive the aid that they're eligible for to attend higher education in its various forms. So when we say customers, it's synonymous with students. Now, we also know that everybody in this room is a partner in terms of how we deliver funds to those end customers or students. So in that regard, we have to make sure that you all are well served with the tools and information you have to make sure when you're delivering those funds to the students, you are well supported in how you're doing that. So I think from my perspective, or all our perspectives, the students are in fact our customers. Microphone 2.
Rachel Richards, Shippensburg University, Pennsylvania. I asked a Fed yesterday, who then sent me to COD, who sent me to CPS, who sent me to NSLDS, who sent me back to the Fed. And so the question wasn't answered, so I'm hoping today it can be. It's in reference to students can now have ultimately 2 FAFSAs on file in the fall semester. So the new FAFSA we get in is prior to spring disbursement. And therefore does not get updated until the next disbursement in the fall, which forces a new ICER, in which case can create an overpayment to students. Do you understand what I'm meaning by that?
Yeah.
So NSLDS said that they don't have a close to limit, comment. They have an over the limit comment, and that ultimately it's the school's responsibility to ensure that we're paying the proper aid, which I completely agree with. However, ICERs are usually what shows us, and then it loads into our system. So if our system doesn't get the most recent information, including spring, then we're over awarding in the fall. And I know at our school we had to return a little over $10,000, and I know that other schools are having similar issues. I don't know if anybody else in the forum is having that.
So we've always had a challenge with the NSLDS history on the ICER because when the application is submitted, we do the match with NSLDS and we get the NSLDS history. If a subsequent correction is made, we don't send back to NSLDS to update that unless very specific kind of changes are made. So there's always been that potential that the NSLDS history, by the time you're actually awarding, isn't up to date.
Of course.
It became a bigger deal when we went to the early FAFSA. And actually last year we had a listening session where I was hoping we would get some feedback about that, because I personally think that it is worthwhile to have a conversation about whether we should continue to provide the NSLDS history on the ICER, knowing that it is less likely to be up to date because of the whole timing thing. And we didn't really get very much feedback about that. So I know that it is more of a challenge now. We actually got a suggestion in the open forum yesterday related to this. The suggestion was that if there are the 2 ICERs on file. Thank you. If there are the 2 ICERs on file, and if a disbursement is made for the prior year, for 17-18, that NSLDS, could they automatically push the 18-19 NSLDS update? And we took that down as a recommendation.
And it may be just as easy to, for the fact that, they can force ICERs to us for the 450% Pell LEU as a, hey, you're getting close. So it could be something like that, if they meet like a $20,000 threshold on the subsidized usage, then it could force a, hey, you're close requirement.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, here at microphone 3.
Hi,
Hi.
Myra Vasquez from Virginia Western Community College. First, does everybody remember hearing Jeff Baker say we should be familiar with Publication 17? IRS Publication 17? Okay, I just wanted to be clear about that. I refer to it often. The other thing is I suggest that our regulatory relief people go to R2T4 Advanced Concepts because it will make your head spin. And the real question that I have is regarding the new verification flag 07. That's where the amended taxes have been, the original tax information has been pulled in, but they haven't amended taxes. Do we have to take any action if they're not selected for verification? I'm sorry.
Amended tax return. Amended tax return, I think they do, right? Because, right. Yes, we think you do, because the 07 is,
Sorry.
yes, you do. You have to,
Okay, so if an 07 shows that the student has amended their taxes and we have original tax information on that ICER,
Correct.
we have to do something.
right.
You have to get a
Now-
1040X.
Right. You need either that you need the 1040X and either a financial aid transcript from the IRS, IRS tax transcript, or you can rely on the individual data fields with ones, meaning from the IRS DRT and not change.
These are people not selected for verification.
Correct, but we're basically identifying something that's a source of conflicting
Okay.
information for you.
Okay, that's what I wanted to verify. So we're not, the verification, this is just another action that we need to take with this new 07 flag, correct?
In the past, you would have, you may have stumbled upon, my words,
Right.
the fact that they had an amended tax return. Now you know they have an amended tax return.
And because the IRS only transfers the original data,
Correct.
we have to do something about that. Okay, everybody heard it, right? Okay, thank you.
Microphone 4.
Okay, first I'd like to start with clarifying, not beating a dead horse because the horse isn't dead yet. That $400 is one of the things we're required to know because I did pull up the IRS website while I was waiting on my turn. The IRS says you have to file an income tax return if your net earnings from self-employment were $400 or more. If your net earnings from self-employment were less than $400, you still have to file a return if you meet any of the other criteria. But when you say that one of the 3 things we have to know is whether a person is required to file a tax return, that's where the $400 becomes an issue.
Right. We also went on to say, however, that it's in instances where it would have a significant impact on the eligibility for Title IV. I can talk to you afterwards, but I don't think in that I know the scenario that you're talking about, and in the scenario where somebody earned greater than 400 but less than the threshold under which they're required to file a tax return for other reasons, it won't have any effect on the EFC. So we don't, that's the reason. And so we're not expecting you to be an IRS tax expert.
So I can take a non-tax filer form from someone that says they're not required to file.
You are not required to be a tax expert beyond the 3 things that we describe on page 113 of the AVG.
This came up a few years ago. I was reminded, and as I'm going to channel, where's Jeff? I'm going to channel my inner Jeff Baker and remind you that sometimes there are things that maybe you don't want to push too hard on.
Okay. All right. I will go to the back of the line because I have other.
Do you have to? Okay, thank you. We'll see you. Back to microphone 1.
Peter Hurley, the University of Michigan, my views, not those of my employer.
Asking for a friend, right?
I was really impressed with this morning's performance regarding the FSA app. I have to ask if the purchase of a smartphone will now be included in the cost of attendance. A lot of students already have them, but really needy students don't.
Well, I would just say in that regard, Wayne mentioned it briefly because it is a mobile-first, mobile-complete strategy, but the intent is to be an omni-channel experience, and that simply means whatever mechanism you're accessing the FAFSA or other products from federal student aid, you should receive the same experience. So if someone is using a browser, if they're calling us through a contact center or using a mobile device, it's all coming from the same data, the same code, the same application, it's the same experience. That's ultimately what we're striving for.
So when we disperse financial aid and then load it to the value-added portion of that app, is there any thought to, if the student withdraws or somehow owes a federal overpayment, that you'll just reach in, grab the money out, and satisfy the debt?
So you're talking about the prepaid card. It's a pilot. And under the pilot, there will be no changes to the existing business processes. It'll be up to you if you want to participate in the pilot. If you do, then any refund that a student is due, you would put on that card. Anything that happens after that, your business processes would remain as they are today under the pilot.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, a student who is using that application has their phone stolen on campus. Whose data breach is it to report?
There's the way that things are designed, there will be no data that's persistent on the device. So all of the interaction, the data will be displayed on the device but not persist. So there'll be no storage on the device. It'll all be on the server side. So in that case, it will not be a breach.
Outstanding. Thank you.
You're welcome. Microphone 2.
Hi.
And I let you ask 3 questions, by the way.
I'm good.
No, I'm just...
David Sheridan, Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. Your colleagues who will be at the graduate professional Birds of a Feather session will hear this also, and that's a plug. Is there any statutory reason why a graduate student only applying for an unsubsidized and/or PLUS loan would need to provide all of the need analysis data on a FAFSA? They're applying for no need-based aid. Doesn't matter if their income is 0 or $1 million.
Yeah, I'm trying, there is the requirement right now in the law, and I'm trying to like process the statutory thing. There is a requirement that they fill out the FAFSA. I believe that's in the law, and the
Submit
FAFSA
a FAFSA, but
right.
the demographic information, yes, but
Right.
would the need analysis information really need to be there?
It's an interesting question.
I'm
You
going
know.
to go back and read.
Okay. I didn't say I had to have an answer, but I'm
No,
throwing it
but
out.
It's an interesting question.
And of course, the last time we were under reauthorization, we didn't have the same requirements for graduate and professional students. So
Precisely.
that's
Yeah.
part of the, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Thank you. And this is a good moment before we go to microphone 3 to mention, I know yesterday we had a few we'll take that backs. So there's, I think, 2 categories of we'll take that back. One is if we don't have an answer to a operational question or something that doesn't require any outside intervention to answer the question. We had some of those that we followed up on today, and if we have additional questions like that that we don't get to at the end of the open forum tomorrow, we'll be posting those as part of the conference materials after the conference. And then there's the second category of we'll take that back, which fall into more regulatory or statutory suggestions, which we may believe that they're good ideas, but we can't say yes or no on the spot that that's something that we would be able to do. So I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that. If there are things that we can and should answer, we'll either answer them now or we'll make sure that it at least gets answered at this session tomorrow, and if not then posted on the conference website, but there's some things that, just by the nature of the suggestion or question, we can't answer definitively today. So, microphone 3.
Thank you, Valdo Calderon, Pomona College in Claremont, California. I want to thank you for bringing up the issue of verification. If you bear with me, I want to provide a little bit of the numbers that are impacting our institution behind the percentages and make a suggestion. Our institution currently has a student body of approximately 1,600 undergraduate students. Last year, we had 8,295 valid ICERs. Of those, 1,442 were selected for verification. This year, we have 5,138 ICERs, 2,121 selected for verification, 17.4% versus 41.3%. Drilling that even further, for the 18-19, 533 of our needs and simplified needs and auto UFC students, 485 of 533 were selected for verification. It's 91%. Of those, 46% used correctly and successfully the IRS data retrieval tool. So I would like to make a suggestion. Yes, I do know that the percentages are expected to drop, but you see our real numbers are already over last year. The mechanism, the algorithm you use to bring that percentage down for our students in the future, perhaps apply that to the existing students who've been selected for verification to make their lives a little bit easier and help out my staff of 6. I do want to thank Robin Thompson, our director, and Jacob Bruin for sending me these numbers over from California. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 4.
Clem LaPietra, Monroe College. It's more of a statement, a comment. I've been coming here for a number of years, and since the conversion from direct loan to 100% direct loans and split borrowing, I've always brought up the issues about communication and the borrower. And one thing, and I'll quote Jeff Baker, always told me, it's the borrower's responsibility to know where their loans are at all time. That's quote unquote Jeff Baker. I think what I heard this morning made that a reality. I'm so impressed with the mobile app and with Dr. Johnson's statement about the third-party loan companies that are out there basically scamming students, and that the team here is going after them, and the mobile app. And I think that everybody has to be commended. It's something I think that will make a difference with the student loan borrowers, that they'll know where their loans are at all times, and it makes Jeff's statement prophetic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, hopefully the borrower's loans and their loan servicer will always be in their pocket. So that's the idea. Microphone 1.
Yes. Hi, I'm Laura McElroy from UC San Diego, and I have a comment about FAFSA data collection, specifically a suggestion for data retrieval to be available for non-tax filing. So now that we have to collect, and basically anytime information is sent to us where we have to go and get more information, if it can be collected up front electronically, that would help us out a lot. So I'm not sure if that's available or possible for the future.
So actually, at the conference last year, I talked about a change that we were planning to implement for 2018-19, which would allow people who said that they had not filed a tax return to use the IRS DRT and get confirmation that they, in fact, did not file a tax return. And that was our plan. And then something changed. We learned through further conversation with the IRS that it is the IRS 6103, which is that little bit of text that seems to put some limitations on us that we all wish we could somehow get around. But 6103 reared its head, and we were told that that was not something that we would be able to implement. So it's not something that we can do as current conditions exist, but we are always communicating with the IRS and talking about ways that we can make the IRS DRT available for more people, get more information, have a better user experience, et cetera, and that's something that is certainly part of those conversations. So we remain optimistic that we might be able to do something down the line, but right now it's not something that, that the law would support.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
On microphone 2.
Hi, Tim Lehman, Southern New Hampshire University. This is in the category of might be a good idea. So we have a large online population, and a lot of them get selected for verification, and part of that process involves submitting material that has to be notarized. And recently, we've been approached by several students that have been wondering about the ability to use an electronic notary process that apparently the state of Virginia has authorized. And as we dug in and looked in the AVG, there's a couple of sentences that kind of roll forward from year to year to year that say you cannot use an electronic notary. And in the spirit of kind of the mobilization and the electronic ability and the new customer service focus, I'm wondering if the department could revisit that whole idea around the use of an electronic notary to clear some of those documents and continue the process in that electronic environment.
And Tim, you're talking about people who are selected for V4 or V5 verification. So those are people that are the model, now, we've been talking about the model here, but is showing that we suspect there may be some issues with their identity. And so I have to tell you a little historical fact, which is we added the notary at the last minute, so to speak, because honestly, we'd prefer for people to come in person. I mean, we've had a couple of people talk to us about the electronic notary, but we need to do a lot more research before we would accept that at this point in time.
Microphone 3.
Hi, my name is Andrew Carlson with Capri College, and I submitted my GE appeal for a couple locations 9 months ago. I have yet to get a response, and I would like to make changes to my PPA, but can't because right now a program is technically in the zone. How do I proceed?
After this session, give me your contact information, and we will be in touch with you.
Thank you.
Microphone 4.
Back to me. I think I forgot to introduce myself last time. I'm sorry. I'm Katie Starling, Kansas State University. And regarding the 400 and 401 codes, this kind of came up a little bit in the regulatory relief listening session earlier. And I just kind of wanted to touch on it here in the open forum. I've reviewed, we have approximately 150 of them, which isn't too bad. And of those, only 16 met any of the criteria that were spelled out in the announcement, which seems fairly low to still have to go through all of them and find them. But so one of those criteria, the one where the IRS DRT AGI equal to 0, but income earned from work is greater than 0, that brings me to, and I know that this is not congressional methodology. I know what I'm dealing with is something that Congress would have to change, but when you have a family whose AGI comes in and is negative $900, but their income earned from work, which we then verify because we've got the 400 code, is $550,000, but they qualify for a Pell Grant, that there's something wrong with that. And I understand there's been a lot of nodding, and we understand you don't want to do verification. Making poor people prove they're poor, that is not what I want to do. And in this case, even verifying them, all I'm doing is verifying that, yes, they meet the congressional methodology, everything they put down is right, and the EFC is valid, but it just doesn't sit right. So I don't want to see verification just shoved away, because the people that, especially last year with all the 399s, we found lots of people that were never selected for verification where the stuff was just wrong, and when we had to go back and fix it, you know, the aid changed, and it changed significantly. So that's...
Yeah, you're correct about how the formula runs that it sets it to 0 with the negative AGI and the various offsets there. The only thing I can just, and I want to make it as a suggestion, but remember, professional judgment can go both ways. You know, what you're trying to do is get at the family's best ability to contribute towards their education. So people tend to think of everybody adjusting something downward to take care of, expenses that were not, considered or something like that. There's also nothing that would preclude you from adjusting a data element in the formula or on the cost of attendance side to more accurately reflect special circumstances. That's about the best answer I can give you at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Microphone 1.
Francisco Valinas, Florida International University. I was curious if you could give us an update on where the department is with their single servicing platform RFP.
Well, I'll touch on it briefly, and then I'll turn it over to Bill. But what you saw in part of the presentation that Dr. Johnson went over today is really where we're headed. And I think I'm going to talk with my hands. But in one of the as-is slides, you saw an architectural diagram that had 9 different boxes with 9 different names that represented the servicing environment that we have today. And then in the future state high-level architecture diagram that was presented, there was 3 core system boxes, one for application and origination, a servicing system, and then I think one for resolution or collections. The intent is, to get to that platform, and the RFP will be a mechanism by which we get there. And Bill, I don't know if you want to give an update beyond that.
The only thing I would add is that it's doing market research now, which is coming to closure, and then the next step would be that RFP.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Microphone 2.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the forum. I think it's very important to all of us to have the information that other people bring up, and it brings up, we can come back then and say, hey, we heard this here and there. It's really just a comment. It has to do with the amended taxes, the flag. I happened to have gotten an email from a financial aid list organization that a scenario did happen where there was a flag and the parents said, we didn't make amended taxes. So the advice was to request the record of account transcript to confirm that there were no changes made. But it was also pointed out that that flag may have occurred because the IRS had noted that there was an arithmetic error, and therefore they themselves note that there's an error there. According to this, it says that the IRS detected an error in the math and corrected the error, which may have caused the flag to be sent on to FAFSA. So I just want to make a note of that.
So you're saying that was an 07, but not by an action taken by the applicant or the
Exactly,
family?
meaning that the IRS noted that there was an error made somehow.
Math.
Yes, and so that's the reason why they make a note of it and send it on to FAFSA. So there may not have been an amended taxes. In any event, the director of financial in this situation is going to be asking for, as I said, the record of account transcript because it will show whether there were any changes made. I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Microphone 3.
Hi, I want to thank you as well. My name is Denise Coulter from Delaware Valley University. I wanted to talk about the 400 and 401 code. I was so happy when 399s were over.
But they're not.
And then insert crying emoji here. We heard about 400 and 401. Now, we're all pretty smart people here, and so I feel you're kind of sneaking in verification in the back door and not calling it verification. I'd prefer that these people be selected for verification and they'd come up on a verification code or a C code so that they were absolutely flagged in our system. Now we have to go back and do all this humbo-jumbo to flag these 400 and 401s like we did the 399 so we know who they are. I don't know who they are, and then we have to go and check whether they fall into this category or that category. Right. So, you know, in one hand, you're saying, oh, we're listening to you, we're taking away verification, or we're doing things with verification, but then you have this sneaky backdoor stuff that you're doing.
Well,
Like, I'm afraid that we'll have 402 and 403, 404, 405.
Yeah, it's, and I'm not even sure we're limited to 3 characters. No. I mean, first of all, we would never do anything intentionally to be sneaky. The timing.
It's true.
With the timing, I remember we were, and I'm speaking a little bit for Misty, and you can jump in here, but the timing on this, remember, was we wanted to bring back the IRS data retrieval tool. That was job one, and I think everybody in this room, including us at the Fred table, thought that was the most important thing. And in order to do that, we had to make some very late in the process changes that we made the best we could. And I understand your concerns. If I were still on a campus, the first thing I would do would be to look to see if any of the 400 401s are selected for verification, and just simply do the verification, knowing that we've said that resolves the comment codes. The second thing I would do is to use FAA access to help me discern quickly and accurately what the causes are, what the condition is, and if it's none of the 3 conditions as we've outlined in that electronic announcement, you're done. Note that in the record, and you're finished. And I mean, we didn't do this as a clever way of adding to your burden. That was not our intent. We just had these challenge questions that have served a purpose that we could no longer pose to the applicant because we had to mask the data in order to bring the DRT back for you. So.
Okay. I'd also just like to suggest that the Department of Ed contact our presidents and let them know what the burden is, and that we should also have all the shiny tools that you guys are making up for the students, because it takes us 5 to 6 years to get any kind of new things that are out there, and then by then it's obsolete. So I'm just asking that, you know, as you're moving forward, try to lessen our burden, that you contact the presidents and they also will try to lessen our burden, or at least give us the tools to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 4.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Johnson from Illinois College. I had a follow-up question with the V4 and V5 as you're trying to lessen everything through. We're a small campus. We have about 950 students. We get maybe 10 V4 and V5s each year total that we have to work with, and I know we're very fortunate for that. But I also have known, I've been at the school for 4 years. 3 of those 4 years, these same 4 students have been selected for V4 every single year, and we have gone in and certified them that we have everything, that there aren't any issues. These are also some of our non-traditional students where it is very inconvenient for them to come into our office. And I'm just wondering what mechanisms are going to be put into place to prevent that reselection when we have to go in and certify that online every year, that this student is who they say they are, and we have all the documentation already to prove it.
I just have a follow-up question for you, and I'm sure I know the answer, but you are reporting, doing the verification reporting of the V4 and the V5 and what you found each year. You're making sure you report on those students?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's good to know, but you know, I think maybe I don't know what we can do, but I think this gives me a chance to plug that verification reporting tool again, because there are people that have not been utilizing it like they're supposed to, and we really need to know that to help us in our selection. I do know that. So.
And we've had some conversations about this, I think, Carney and I and others. One of the challenges with identity theft is that there's not a 100% way to know that it's not the same person using the same identity, and so we struggle with that. We'll talk about it some more and make sure, but some of the fraudsters that are out there that are doing some of this mischievous things are very clever, and they use student identifiers, and the fact that you verified it is helpful, and if you're coding them the way Carney suggests, that's very helpful. But so we'll talk some more about that.
Back to microphone 1. Tyler.
Hi, Tyler. Samuel Merritt, speaking for myself again.
Well, thank you, Tyler.
Wayne Johnson mentioned the debit card this morning, and it raised some flags for me and other people I've heard. I have some multi-part questions regarding that. The first one was
One long question.
One
which is
long
multiple-
question, all right. Is it going to be attached to a bank account? What do you mean by you're tracking the payment, what did he call that? The improper payments? He said that you're going to use a debit card to check that, and then that leads to what are you going to be checking with what students pay with their with their debit card, and how will they pay rent with that? I think that was it.
One question. That wasn't as long as I thought.
I might not be able to answer all that in one answer.
right.
So I think we technically will have the ability to track payments. Whether they're actually tracked or not requires a number of policy discussions. So, I mean, that's, the pilot is going to be, just as I said before, it'll be, having you put money, a refund on the card, nothing else changes. Was there another part of that question?
It was related, I think, in terms of, that the tracking, if someone's trying to pay their rent or something, they want to make sure that they're not encumbered by, the card or prevent it from doing so on the card. And so as Bill said, the intent is originally to make a pilot. We would technically have the ability to do those certain things by merchant code, by SKU, but I don't think that we
But as
get
we've
there out of the
implemented those kind of payment transaction products throughout our universities, we've had to attach bank accounts, and students have had to sweep money. I mean, most landlords don't take Visa. I mean, it's just not done yet. Maybe they will. Maybe you'll Venmo them, but it's just not the way that the world works for paying housing right now.
Okay. Well, as Bill said, the initial implementation will be a pilot, and we'll, on a volunteer basis, and then we'll work through some of those issues.
So the billions of improper payments, it seemed like those were two unrelated issues, and can you connect that for me, what he meant by that? I was hoping he'd be here, but.
Well, I think, I certainly don't want to speak for Dr. Johnson, but there's two forms actually when we make the disbursement. Is it going to the right individual? And we mentioned identity theft, and is it for the right award amount, and those sorts of things that connect to improper payments. I think where Wayne was going is the potential for folks to use federal funds, overages for things that they weren't intended for, so for outside federal purposes, and so he was making that connection.
That seems like a slippery slope, but
Microphone 2.
Hi, my name is Diane Cheng from the Institute for College Access and Success, and I had a question about loan forgiveness under the income-driven repayment plans. Because the repay plan provides loan forgiveness after 20 years of payments for some borrowers, there are some borrowers who could already qualify for loan forgiveness or be close to qualifying if they entered income contingent repayment in the 90s and then switched into repay. So I'm wondering whether there are any borrowers who have gotten forgiveness already, or if you can provide a projection of how many borrowers are likely to get forgiveness in the next year, and if you can share any general information about those borrowers, like ranges for their debt and income, anything about their repayment history patterns, because that would be really helpful considering that under current law, any debt forgiven under those IDR plans is considered taxable income.
So we have approved four for forgiveness under the ICR to date. I don't have a projection off the top of my head for the next year. For public service loan forgiveness, it's much harder to project because we don't know who intends to file an application unless they've already submitted the employment certification form. I think based on the number of employment certification forms received to date, the number is fairly low over the next year. But clearly we are receiving applications now from applicants that have not yet submitted and not previously submitted the employment certification form. So that's a much more difficult number to forecast.
Thank you.
Microphone 3.
Hi.
Hi.
Daniel Barkowitz, Valencia College. Question for you: with the move to masking of the data, Misty, on the FAFSA, what responsibilities have changed, if any, for us as administrators in terms of disclosing to parents their income information? What are the requirements around that disclosure? And the specific question goes back to 400-401, but it will depend on the answer you give.
Well, thank you for directing that question to me.
You're welcome.
But I am going to pass it on down because.
You were going to do that.
Same thing.
Huh? Yeah, right.
But I appreciate you think I know everything.
I want to make sure I understand the question, so I'm going to rephrase it in my own words. So you're saying, with the masking of data and the fact that the student doesn't have the income and tax information on the student aid report, but you do on the ISA record, has the expectations changed in terms of what you can share with the
family?
With the
So
family.
the family comes in and says, there's a problem with my FAFSA. What information do you have on my FAFSA? What are we obligated or allowed to disclose?
Well, I would.
Yeah, what we've said to date is that if you need to confirm that they are who they say they are, and that the best way to do that, I think we've said, is in person with a government-issued photo ID, so that you know that you're talking to the people that have the right to have that information. That's what we've said to date.
That becomes difficult, obviously, with phone support and the rest of those pieces. And specifically around the 400-401 question, where the conversation, much like 399, was all about specific data elements. It becomes very difficult to resolve the situation with the family if you can't get into specifics about what was on the FAFSA.
Right.
So that's the quandary here, is how to resolve it with a family who, is sending a child to Florida, but they're living in North Carolina when the parents aren't sitting in front of you. So I just ask you to think that through in terms of what the guidance is around disclosure.
And the only thing I would add to that is that if it's about the information that was supplied by the IRS, there's the ability to direct them to the Get Transcript phone so that they can order their transcript through the phone to see exactly what was passed to you by the IRS, or from us, from the IRS.
And I just want to clarify, because I want to make sure I understood what you were saying. The reason that 400 or 401 is triggered is because at least one of the data elements that is potentially in conflict came from the IRS.
Correct.
So that is correct. So what you're questioning is the other thing that potentially caused the conflict. So for example, if you had is it like AGI equal to something from the untaxed income, you know the AGI is correct because it came from the IRS. So what you're questioning is the untaxed income. If you're seeing that it's the same, you know which answer is correct.
Right.
So the question is the other one correct or not?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 4.
Hi, Dave Richards from Fuller Seminary. Every year when I hand the FAFSA or the FISAP over to my president to sign, he says, "Am I going to jail?" And I say, "If you're going to jail, I'm going as well." So we went today to the e-campus-based to COD migration seminar, where it was said that all COD users will have access to the FISAP data and the ability, I'm assuming, to make changes since there's full access. I'm not quite as confident of my president necessarily signing that, stating that that information is true and correct. And so, given the department's emphasis on information security and data integrity, where are we in terms of being sure that there will be some sort of access control for this when we get ready to submit these in October?
So the folks that will have access to update the FISAP will be the same employees that you've granted update access to within COD. Not all users will be able to update it, only those users that have update access already.
That's not the way it was presented in the session we were in. It was
I wasn't at the session. There might have been a misunderstanding, but that is the case.
Okay, is there any way to get even more granular than that? Because you're talking about loans versus a different type of reporting.
Not in the near future. I mean, one thing we could do, if you're worried about employees making updates, we could look at having an email sent to the director or whoever is designated whenever there's an update made to the FSA?
I think something like that would be helpful, at least in the interim.
Okay, we'll look into that.
Yeah, since it's such a certification issue.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good question. Thank you. Not that they're all not good. Microphone one.
Sure. Laura McElroy again from UC San Diego. I did have a second question, and I did wait.
Very good.
Okay. So actually, it's more of a comment. It is about 400, 401. Sorry. And it's basically if I know you can't present the same question that you did before, but I think you can reword it possibly for future, and that would be to just say, can you recertify this answer instead of saying we see a conflict with this. That way, again, the information's being collected on the front end electronically. Sending it to us means we have to create a process to collect that information. We're trying to make that an electronic process, but it requires parent signature, so that usually happens by paper. So anything, if you can re-ask it on the front end, that would really help us. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone two.
Hi, Brian Carroll, University of Colorado Boulder. I appreciate what you've done with masking the data and preventing them from changing that once they've done the DRT. There are several other questions on the FAFSA that are at the time of initial filing, what is this, such as assets. I think once a applicant submits their FAFSA, you should prevent them from changing that data in the future. You're causing conflicting data for institutions. That's a suggestion. My other one is a question. Over FSA Tech, there was a report of people changing school codes, which is coming back and showing that they've no longer done the DRT when they previously had done it before, just by changing something as a school code. I wonder if there's been any progress with that and if we'll be seeing pushed ICERs.
So there are actually two issues that were identified via FSA Tech. Both of them are related to how the IRS request flag is being set, and both of them are occurring because people are doing really crazy things that we did not expect them to do. So in one instance, what we're seeing is that they're answering the question about their tax filing status. We pre-populate that into the IRS authentication page. And that answer has to be correct in order for the user to successfully authenticate with the IRS. When they transfer the data back, that is a field that we're not actually masking because it's self-reported. And so what we are finding is that people are changing the answer to that question. So if they change it so that it creates a conflict with marital status, then everything's working the way that it's supposed to. So for example, if I said that I was married and my tax filing status was married filed jointly, and then after I transferred all the data over, I changed it to indicate that I was married filing separately, I'd have a whole different issue because now I've created a scenario where I never should have used the DRT. But if I am, say, single, and I say that I filed as single, and then I subsequently change the answer to head of household, that doesn't create a conflict with the marital status, so we're not, it doesn't create a conflict with the marital status. So that is an example of an instance where what's happening is the IRS request flag should change from a 2 to a 3, and it is not. But you know that the answer to that question was changed because we added the data field flags. And so you're seeing the data field flag tied to the tax filing status field to indicate it was changed, but the IRS request flag is remaining at 2. So that was brought to our attention through FSA Tech, and we have done some research and determined that it is a system issue that we're going to need to resolve. We're in the process of drafting an electronic announcement, which we hope to be posting sometime within the next week or so. We actually have a second issue, which we're going to be including in that same electronic announcement, and we're trying to get a little more information about that one, which is why we haven't gotten the electronic announcement out yet. I'm going to cover that issue, and then I'm going to pass it to Craig and Carney if they want to elaborate on guidance to schools about how to handle these. The second issue is related to the IRS request flag value of 6. So a 6 is set when you used the DRT, transferred the data, and then subsequently changed the answer to a non-transferred question such that you now no longer meet the criteria to use the DRT. And for some reason, people are changing the answer to a question and then changing their mind and changing the answer back to what it was before. And so we're changing the flag to a 6, and then we're not changing it back to the 2 that it should be. So that's the second scenario that was brought to our attention. Both of these issues, we have very low volumes. We don't have a final determination as to whether or not there will be a reprocessing once the issues are resolved, but we are expecting to resolve them sometime in January. And then the electronic announcement that explains what's causing the issues, our expected fix, and then what schools should be doing with the ICERs they have, that is what we're hoping to get out within the next week or so. So do you want to talk about the guidance?
Well, I just mentioned what I said yesterday, and so some of the guidance that we're working on that we'll be issuing in the next few days on the first scenario that she described is when you have an O2 but you have a change, the field flag for tax filing status indicates that that was changed and all the rest of the data fields are unchanged. You may rely on that for verification purposes because the tax filing status doesn't affect eligibility. So, and we'll be saying that more formally in the next few days.
And I just realized I reversed the order of those because you were asking about the second one. So in that scenario, you have somebody who changed a critical field, then changed it back, but then they also made a change like to school code. So that's what you're seeing, and that's not what caused the issue to happen. It's just the only change that you're seeing because the other change they made, they reverted back, and so you can't see that they ever touched that field.
And I know it was a while ago, but the first thing I want to respond to, because I had actually funny story related to that. When I left a campus to come to Washington 3 years ago, my staff, who are sitting right over here, begged me to do something about changing assets, updating assets on the FAFSA, and I promised I would. They're sitting here laughing right now. And I got handed my lunch on that because there's a statutory requirement that the applicant has to be able to correct that data field, and we can't distinguish easily between an update and a correction. So we're aware of it. It's on my list. It's still on my list because I still go back home to Nebraska once in a while. And so I know what you're saying. I get it.
Thanks.
Microphone 3.
Hello, my name is Gloria Ponce Rodriguez, but I'm going to talk about secondary. I work for Fresno Unified School District, and we were also a FAFSA pilot project site alumni. And I want to say thank you because when we first started, we were at 28% completion rate, and we are now currently at, 2016, 95% completion rate. The project really opened my eyes as far as targeting and troubleshooting and all that other stuff that comes along with FAFSA, because the counselors have to be savvy, and I am the financial literacy coach for our district. I wish more school districts had a position like mine, so that way they can help all of these financial aid administrators. And we have a very close partnership with Fresno City and Fresno State. But there's a couple of things that I would like to see, because I see it with the parents, and when you're dealing with thousands of parents, you hear the complaints. The FSA ID is very challenging. It got better this year. However, we still have parents that have PIN numbers, and maybe they had a child 4 years ago that went off to college. Now they had a PIN then, but they don't know what the FSA ID. Maybe we need to also accommodate them and just say maybe previous PIN holders and just give them their own information, because they have to navigate a lot to find that information. And it also pulls me away from my work, and I'm always have to go to the sites and work with a lot of families. And another thing is that the I-10, the individual tax identification number, they normally start with 9 in California. It would be nice, because that's where a lot of my errors come from, if there's something that you can just put in red or alert. If there's a 9 that comes in, please, if this is an I-10, you need to put the 9 zeros, because that would alleviate a lot of my errors. And my completion for the state aid is 60% March 2nd, but I want it to be 95%, like June 30th. And so I can't, there's only one of me, and of course I train all our counselors, but it would be a lot easier for our district and especially our Central Valley kids, because many of our kids, their parents are undocumented, but they're U.S. citizens, and they're entitled to receive this aid in a timely manner. So, thank you.
Can I just clarify the second suggestion you made? So you're saying that if they are entering something in the parent SSN field that begins with a 9, that we should alert them that that's not
In
the number they should be
California,
entering?
all of our ITINs, like the parents who put that 9 number in.
Instead of all zeros.
But they don't know. I mean, you know, the student is trying to help them at home, and so we're trying to, you know, I created a lot of tools, and some of you know that I've created a lot of tools for my families for best practices, but it's just getting that information out, and some of the students complete it at home, but it would be nice if we just can kind of alert the families a little. I think that would be a lot easier for our families if they knew that, because once they submit it, there's another suggestion too. Can you ask your federal representatives not to tell our students to complete another FAFSA, because if they pass that March 2nd deadline, if they just complete another FAFSA because they put a wrong social on the FAFSA or a wrong name, that they'll lose their Cal State or their UC, $12,000. So if I have a student apply in October, November, and our deadline for state aid for Cal Grant is March 2nd, and you have a rep saying, oh, just complete another FAFSA, and we'd rather the SAR to come back to the students so they can make the corrections. We have cleaner data, but it also save them that $12,000 plus a year if a UC, if they're going to UC, or if they're going to Cal State, that's $5,800. That will save their Cal Grant. So sometimes working with the states, knowing what their rules and regulations and policies are, it would be easier for our students, and then that way our students can go to their first choice university.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're under 10 minutes, so we'll try to go through as many folks as we can on microphone 4.
Yes, hi. Pat Watkins from Eckerd College, and I just need a clarification from my colleague previously, Carney. You said that we could use professional judgment to go and change the AGI when the family's income is a lot higher. But however, usually when we do a professional judgment, it is brought to us by a parent and not initiated by the financial aid office. And I'm concerned that if I did that, I'm going to have a parent come back to me and say, it says here I have to put down my adjusted gross income. Why did you change it and make me not eligible? What recourse do I have?
Well, professional judgment is totally in your hands regardless. So it is, you know, it's totally up to you. It was just an observation that professional judgment does cut both ways. There's no requirement that it be initiated. This is statutory, right? There's no requirement that it be initiated by the family.
But usually it's in the best interest of the family.
Well, that's why I say it can go both ways. That was my only comment, is if somebody's very concerned about a particular family and has concerns about that, there is something they can do. You're correct. I mean, having been on a campus, you're probably right that somebody might come and visit you as well and ask you the question. But, you know, it is up to you.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Microphone 1.
Thank you. My name is Charles Pruitt. I'm from Georgetown Law. And I have a question regarding public service loan forgiveness and the employment verification. I understand the concern that there may be some undercounting based on people not having to file the forms. I'm also a little bit concerned on the other side, though, that there is some overcounting of forms that have already been filed. In my world, in the law world, it's very common for students who do clerkships, for example, they are completing PSLF eligible employment. However, the most predominant career path post-clerkship is firm. And they will go file the form, and they will be starting to be counted as in the population that could get forgiveness, but they're rapidly exiting. So I don't know, has the department thought about reaching out to the schools to say, well, these are the types of jobs that we're seeing, what's the predominant route, so you can start filtering and getting probabilities that they'll hit completion? And/or is there a double check that when someone does file the form, but all of a sudden they're now paying at or above a normal 10-year rate, is there a way that that's being analyzed and starting to filter? Because without data that's reliable, folks on the Hill that want to attack PSLF have lots of ammunition. So I think it behooves us and the department in general to really try to tack down what it really looks like. Any thoughts?
We've had a number of discussions with folks that have expressed similar concerns. We are committed to putting data out, statistics on public service loan forgiveness onto our data site. I mean, I'd like to talk to you after this about, sharing information as far as, the types of jobs and, how we could kind of further that agenda. But, we are committed to using the data to get these forecasts as accurate as possible and to make sure that the applicants that are filing for public service loan forgiveness are well aware of where they stand and what their options are. But if we could chat after this, that might be helpful.
Great, thanks. Happy to help.
Thank you. Microphone 2.
Hi, David Sheridan again. We all get annoying robocalls. The one I actually receive the most is somebody telling me that I must take immediate action in order to reduce or eliminate my student loan payments. I had a really good way of eliminating my student loan payments. I paid them all off a very long time ago because I think I took my student loans out when Jimmy Carter was still president. So Dr. Johnson alluded to this very briefly this morning. I hope the department, several years ago, you did a great job on finally shutting down, FAFSA.com. I hope the department is going to really put some work into shutting down these bogus loan servicing processes, because every time I have decided just to play with them and pressed 1 to speak to a customer service rep, and I tell them what I do for a living, they hang up on me. I'm batting.
I've experienced that as well.
So I don't know if there are any solutions you can discuss at this point.
Well,
If not,
I would say to everyone, if you individually or when you're talking to students, if you haven't been to the FSA feedback session, I think there's another one tomorrow, but we put forth the feedback system about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and we have a path there for suspicious activity, and we use that data on a regular basis. And so if we can capture information on that experience, the name of the party, at least the doing business name that they were using at the time that they contacted you, or any details you could offer in that feedback system, we use that to aggregate data. We work very closely with the Office of Inspector General within the Department of Education. There's certain circumstances that they're able to take action. If the organization is using the Department of Education or the seal or branding themselves somehow as federal student aid, we can work with our Office of General Counsel to send cease and desist letters, but we also share data with the Federal Trade Commission in their Consumer Sentinel system. So all of the complaint data, suspicious activity data that goes into our feedback system, we also send over to the Consumer Sentinel that's run by the FTC. They also mine that data and then look for sort of trend level, threshold level amounts, and they will go after those organizations as well. So it is something that I think we're collectively making an effort to try and tamp down.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We have time for probably one more question at microphone 3.
Alicia Stowe, Dunwoody College of Technology, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Most of the general sessions here have been about making the FAFSA and making applying for financial aid easier and more accessible, so thank you. But one topic that hasn't been brought up at all, and hopefully I don't get booed for bringing it up, is the fact that most students can't pay for school with financial aid. So there hasn't been any talk about making financial aid better help for actually paying for school. You know, the average cost of college now is over $20,000 in the United States. Full Pell eligibility, full undergrad Stafford loan eligibility doesn't meet that. Students still have additional costs, fees and books, et cetera. I know at our school, the students that get into trouble with student loans, there's so much talk about the student loan debt in the country. The students that get in trouble with us are the students that do get approved for private loans at really high interest rates or bad repayment options, or the students that can't get approved for private loans because they have no credit, they have no family to co-sign with for them. They drop out, and then their federal loans go into default because they had the federal loans while they were there. So is there any talk about increasing undergraduate loan eligibility or any other options for students to get enough money to pay for school?
This is OPE.
Craig's like, oh, this is OPE. I mean, we're all very concerned about the high cost of college tuition and college attainment. What you're suggesting about increasing loan limits would be something that's a statutory change and would be something that would be looked at in reauthorization, I would think.
I would add, too, I mean, we talk about all the time the partnership, and it is a partnership between the federal government, the institution, state agencies, and private sources, and that's been true for quite a while, I think, so we acknowledge what you're saying. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll have the last open forum tomorrow afternoon. Hope to see you then. Thank you.